Inflation slows in June to 11.2% from 11.4% in May of 2019. Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry loads CBN's lending policy. Now, profit-taking continues to drag the Nigerian equities market down, and angry Bitcoin Ponzi scheme investors in South Africa burn down operators' home. The program is Business Express, reaching you from Abuja, the nation's capital, on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I am Amina Nujaim. Welcome to the program. Nigeria's Consumer Price Index, which measures inflation, slows to 11.22% on a year-on-year basis in June of 2019, 0.18 percentage points lower than the rate recorded in May of 2019, which was 11.4%. On a month-on-month basis, the headline index increased by 1.07% in June 2019. This is a 0.04% rate lower than the rate recorded in May 2019, which was 1.11%. Food inflation went down to 13.56% in June from 13.79% in May. Core inflation stood at 8.8%, down from 9% in May of 2019. Bauchi State at 15.4% recorded the highest level of inflation, while Kaduna led the numbers in food inflation with 17.5%. The percentage change in average composite CPI for the 12-month period ending June 2019 over the average of the CPI for the previous month recorded was 11.29%, similar to the 11.29% recorded in May of 2019. The lending policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, will normalize the credit market, spur economic growth, and broaden the interface between entrepreneurs and the banking industry. This is according to the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Director General of the LCCI, Moda Yusuf, stated this while reacting to CBN's July 3rd letter to all deposit money banks mandating them to maintain a 60% loan-to-deposit ratio. In a chat with reporters in Lagos, with the CBN directive, banks are required to give minimum of 60% of their deposit as loans with effect from September 30. A new UN report indicates that there was vast inequalities across countries and among poorer segments of society. Leah Katung Babatunde in this report gives a breakdown of its implication on Nigeria.
Global Multidimensional Poverty Index (MPI) from the UN Development Programme UNDP shows that in the 101 countries studied, 31 low income, 68 middle income, and 2 high income amounting to 1.3 billion people are multidimensionally poor. This means that poverty is defined not simply by income, but by a number of indicators, including poor health, poor quality of work, and the threat of violence. The report notes that poverty is everywhere. Inequality within countries is massive, and action against poverty is needed in all developing regions, noting that sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia are home to the largest proportion of poor people, some 84.5%. Within these regions, the level of inequality is described as massive. In sub-Saharan Africa, it ranges from 6.3% in South Africa to 91.9% in South Sudan. The disparity in South Asia is from 0.8% in the Maldives to 55.9% in Afghanistan. Many of the countries studied in the report show extensive internal levels of inequality. In Uganda, for example, the incidence of multidimensional poverty in the different provinces ranges from 6% in Kampala to 96.3% in Karamoja. Over half of the 1.3 billion people identified as poor, some 663 million are children under the age of 18, and some 428 million are under the age of 10. The vast majority of these children, around 85%, live in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, split roughly equally between the two regions. The picture is particularly dire in Burkina Faso, Chad, Ethiopia, Niger, and South Sudan, where 90% or more of children under the age of 10 are considered to be multidimensionally poor. The report indicated that multidimensionally poor Nigerians increased from 86 million to 98 million between 2007 and 2017. One section of the report evaluates the progress that is being made in reaching Goal 1 of the UN's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, namely ending poverty in all its forms everywhere. The report identifies 10 countries with a combined population of around 2 billion people to illustrate the level of poverty reduction, and all of them have shown statistically significant progress towards achieving Goal 1. The fastest reductions were seen in India, Cambodia, and Bangladesh. This edition of Business Express will be seeking out ways Nigeria could join the League of Nations with the record fastest reduction in poverty.
Dr. Tefa Abraham, a financial and development economist, joins us to look at the 2019 Global Multidimensional Poverty Index, MPPI, and Nigeria. It's good to see you on Business Express today.
Good to see you, Amina. Nice to meet you.
Okay. Now, looking at the Multidimensional Poverty Index, it seems to go beyond the normal poverty. It's talking about societal issues, access to health, infrastructure. What's your take on these latest reports?
Thank you very much again, Amina, for this opportunity. The 2019 Multidimensional Poverty Index report is a joint initiative, or was jointly produced by the UNDP, that's the United Nations Development Programme, and Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative of the Oxford University. It provides it was released July 11, 2019. It provides comprehensive multi-dimensional poverty analysis data for 101 countries, covering 76% of the global population. And like you rightly highlighted from your question, unlike any other poverty measure, this one combines a multi-perspective analysis to poverty, bringing out inequality, and not just highlighting poverty, but bringing out both poverty incidence and the intensity of poverty.
All right. Yeah. Nigeria was poorly ranked. Why?
Yes, Nigeria ranked, like unlike other data, the score of Nigeria in that MPI report is 0.295. And if you look at it in terms of incidence of poverty, Nigeria had about 52%. But the incidence, the intensity rather, of poverty, Nigeria ranked like 56%. When you compare it to countries like Gambia, Gambia has also the same, above 50% in incidence, but 46% in intensity. So the bottom line of that is like asking, how poor are you? How poor is Nigeria? We say, okay, about 56% population of Nigerians are poor. So how bad is the poverty? The dimension of the poverty as measured by the MPI result there brings out the educational perspective, the standard of living perspective, and the access to healthcare perspective. These are the areas in which Nigeria really performed bad, and it affected our overall ranking.
Okay, talking about overall ranking, looking at the standards of measurements, how would you equate it to the realities in Nigeria? Is it realistic, or is it theoretical?
Well, I somehow have a bias towards global, global organizations. I believe they are guided by some standard, by some principle. And the UNDP has a presence globally. And Nigeria is a member the UNDP.
So does that standard apply to Nigeria?
Yes, yes. You know, what they produce by the MPI measure is indices or indices rather, that will help Nigeria to situate its current policy measures towards fighting poverty. Like if you look at what the present government is doing, the last time I was here, we highlighted about how Nigeria is doing a lot in terms of social safety net and in other dimensions. But in terms of this particular report, it places a huge tax on the country to begin to harmonize its programs like the National Social Safety Net Register, like the National, how will I call it now, under the Vice President's office, the one that the social intervention programs, and also efforts from national population, and calling on us to begin immediately a national population census so that we can understand the dimensions. Before I wrap up on that, the MPI will tell us this is how bad poverty has become in Nigeria. But it cannot tell us, it provides that data at the regional level, at the national level, and at the subnational level, that's the level of the states. But for households, for villages, for communities, it will take our own national population census to be able to break down that demographics so that we can begin to see what we can achieve towards it. But if you look at the target set by the National Social Safety Net Register, they set a target of registering 5 million people by 2015. But the last time I listened to the coordinator, Yowa Apera, he made it clear that so far between April to July, they've been able to move that number of registered voters from 3 million to about 4.5. So the country is doing well, but we need to situate in terms of global best.
Okay, can you speak to the cooperation between the federal government and international organizations?
Yeah, definitely.
Because they have to work together.
Yeah, and they do that a lot, especially through interventions in the budget. If you look at ministries like Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, not every line item in the capital expenditure is funded by the government. There are some interventions that you have, there are some projects, some line items that you find donor partners funding through their intervention. And that's why they do a lot of impact assessment analysis to isolate their own overall effect on that system. So the more the government sustains that relationship with donor partners, the more we get some kind of interventions to help scale up our overall poverty reduction efforts.
Still talking about collaboration.
Yes, Amina.
Let's talk about the sub-regional organizations closer to home. Let's not go too far.
Okay.
How about that?
Like ECOWAS, you know?
Yes.
Regional effort towards, you know, generally the way West Africa is modeled, ECOWAS is looked at as a bloc from the West African perspective. Like I said, the NPI report hits on, it introduces 3 dimensions: health, education, and living standard. And that living standard is broken down into some indices: access to water, sanitation, things like that. These are all climate change related variables. And climate change analysis is done on West Africa as a region. It now takes a country to buy into its own analysis of how these variables that are likely to trigger poverty affects our own country to build into. So ECOWAS needs a single voice to determine how this poverty indices affect them. And currently, I know through ECOWAS, there's a West African Science Center for Climate Change and Adaptive Land Use. They have a lot of programs within the West African sub-region to ensure that the region as a group has a policy stand towards addressing climate change.
Let's throw in states and local government into the mix.
Okay.
What would it be?
Well, for states, as soon as already there's a national policy or effort towards poverty reduction, and the whole of that is captured or umbrellaed by SDG 1, which MPI, this report by this MPI report 2019 also serves as a monitoring tool. It monitors the SDG 1. And for states and local government, we all know that the population of the country is at the bottom of the pyramid, which is the local government. And if we are to achieve any significant result in poverty reduction or in achieving SDG target, it must be a bottom-top approach. Serious engagement is needed at the local government, whereby they also need to buy into this overall poverty reductions strategies that the country is working towards.
Let's talk about reversing this negative trend.
Okay.
Now, what would Nigeria's bargaining chip be in reversing this trend?
Nigeria's bargaining chip right now, you know, like I said the last time I was here, poverty is a long-term phenomenon. Economists can only grapple with that today through adjustment or judicious mix in monetary and fiscal policy mix. At best, they can also introduce income policy mix by subsidies and taxes. But we all know how the market is rigid towards subsidies and how efficient market operates better when there are no subsidies in an ideal scenario. So to couch it in this way, the best way to go about our bargaining chip is through this social interventions program that we have currently, and it is domiciled in the VP's office. A lot of intervention going on, because you cannot trigger some policies today and see poverty reduced tomorrow. There need to be deliberate effort towards intervening to bring down poverty. And all those efforts in the Vice President's office, like I said, needs to be put together through a framework to ensure that they are sustained, so that in the long run, Nigeria should be looking at returning back to development planning.
Are you saying that there's no short-term solution to all? It all sounds like long-term. And we're looking for some kind of relief.
Okay, Amina. It's a long-term issue, right? But there are short-term measures, like the way the CBN is doing currently, through its intervention, to critical sectors. You understand? The way so the CBN's
various interventions are helping,
like the Anchors Rural program. Definitely, it is helping to roll back those short-term shocks that poverty has on rural households. Because these are the real victims. These are the poorest of the poor. These are the people in the 20% bottom quintile of poverty. So through interventions, you can help people to kickstart their activities, business activities, and help them to return back to the trajectory that in the long run we see them exit the poverty. And before I round up, it's important that Nigeria conducts a national population census, because reports like this MPI can only give an umbrella index. But to understand the household demographics in terms of gender, childhood, old age, and how these things should be intervened. Yes, the effort in the President's office through NASCO can help, but a national population census is still needed. Perhaps they can do a collaboration to be able to.
Now, as a development expert with your vast knowledge, what should Nigeria spend on immediately for accelerated growth?
Thank you again, Amina. Like the NPI results from the Oxford Poverty Initiative and UNDP is very comprehensive. Like I said, unlike any other report, it highlights incidents of poverty and intensity. Then introduces 3 dimensions: education, health, and living standard. To be able to spend on any of these sectors, the first thing we have to resort to is our annual budget. We want to see increase in education spending, increase in health spending. In terms of living standard, what we need here is an overall long-term development plan. Nigeria has to return to development planning. Right now, the SDG serves as a framework for long-term planning. But we need to really own something that we call our own, the National Development Plan.
I know you have a lot to say, but we are going to have to end it here. We have been talking to Dr. Tefa Abraham. He is a financial and development economist. It was a pleasure.
My
and
pleasure,
I bet you we're going to still keep talking, but not today.
I look forward. Thank you, Amina.
Thanks for coming. Precious metals and the oil market are trading on the green this Monday. On that note, let's see how commodities are faring in the global markets. Now, you might want to take a second look at that initiative you want to invest your resources on. Angry South African investors who lost millions of dollars in the now defunct Bitcoin Ponzi scheme called Bitcoin wallets have looted and burnt down the house of Shalele Gumza Mbatha, the operator of the project, at the weekend. Mbatha, a former paramedic who was the main operator of the failed scheme, promised participants a 100% return on their investment after 15 days, reportedly tried to deceive investors into believing that all was well with the scheme. After discovering the scam, the angry investors took laws into their own hands and set the property of the Ponzi scheme operator on fire. Interesting story there. Despite a remarkable listings by Airtel Africa, the Nigerian Stock Exchange failed to close the week on a positive note. Let's join Bosede Abel for a recap of market activities for the week ended Friday, the 12th of July.
Remained firmly in chart last week as the NSE All-Share Index depreciated by 2.41% to close the week at 28,566.79 basis points. The year-to-date return stood at minus 9.11%, while market capitalization appreciated by 7.91% at 13.9 trillion naira. There was a total turnover of 988.4 million shares worth 13.8 billion naira traded in 16,414 deals. All other indices finished lower, with the exception of the NSE Banking Index that rose by 0.78%, while the NSE ASM Index closed flat. The financial services industry led the activity chart with 769.3 million shares valued at 7.2 billion naira traded in 8,530 deals. The conglomerate industry followed with 55.2 million shares worth 92.4 million naira. The third place was the ICT industry with a turnover of 42.80 million shares worth 4.1 billion naira in 839 deals. Trading in the top three equities, Zenith Bank PLC, FBN Holdings PLC and Wapik Insurance PLC accounted for 348.8 million shares worth 3.5 billion naira in 2,703 deals. 1,115 units of exchange traded products ETPs valued at 165,837 naira were traded in 3 deals. A total of 756 units of federal government bonds valued at 730,454.35 were traded in 7 deals. In the price movement chart, 18 equities appreciated in price during the week, 39 equities depreciated in price, while 111 equities remained unchanged.
Well, the numbers don't look good at the Nigerian Stock Exchange. The week started on a negative note as profit-taking continues to take its toll. At the close of trade this Monday, the All-Share Index lost 0.70% to close at 28,341.03 basis points, while market capitalization increased to 13.812 trillion naira. The top traded stocks by volume were Wapik, UBA and Guarantee Trust Bank. Nestle, Corn Oil and Nigerian Breweries led the gainers table for the day. And on global market report, U.S. stock market is set to extend rally as earnings season awaits. Bosede Abel has summary of happenings on global stocks.
In the United States, major indices surged to new highs last week after U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell indicated during congressional testimony that an interest rate cut could be on the horizon from the central bank. The Dow closed above 27,000 for the first time on Thursday, and Friday's gain brought its increase on the week to 1.5%. However, stocks were mixed Monday, 15th July, as investors paused following a record-setting performance on Wall Street last week. In early hours of the day, Dow futures were up 31 points but indicated a positive open of around 17 points. The S&P 500 pointed to a slightly higher implied open, while the Nasdaq was seen marginally lower. Meanwhile, China's economic growth slowed to 6.2% in the second quarter from a year earlier, its weakest pace in at least 27 years, as the trade war took its toll. However, stocks recovered on Monday from an early slip to finish the trading day higher, following the release of the gross domestic product data that showed the Chinese economy growing at its slowest pace in at least 27 years. Shanghai Composite added 0.4% to 2,942.19. Hang Seng Index topped 0.29% as of its final hour of trading, while markets in Japan were closed on Monday for her holiday. European stocks erased early gains in early trading amid worries that China's economy is slowing due to a trade war with the United States. While in Africa, stocks were mostly positive. Namibia Overall Index, Nairobi's All Share, Tunisia's Tunidex, and South Africa's JSE Top 40 surged higher in early trading, while Ghana's GSE Composite was negative.
That wraps up Business Express for today. You can access all previous episodes on YouTube, and you can also communicate with us on Twitter, and the handle is @NTA News Now. Don't forget the hashtag BizExp. Business Express returns on Wednesday. I am Amina Nujaim. Thank you for watching.